Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Bernardi-Reis. I'm one of the producers of Radical Grace, and we'll introduce the rest of the panelists.
So, hi, I'm Rebecca Parrish, director of Radical Grace. Thank you for coming out and spending your Friday night with us. And I will introduce the rest of the panelists. This is a surprise guest tonight, Sister Chris Schenk. And we were together at another screening earlier today, and I fell off the stage and sprained my ankle. So Chris insisted on driving me here. So now we have her for our panel tonight, too. And next we have Cristina Traina, who is a professor at Northwestern University in theology and ethics, and feminist issues and power relations and things like this. And this is Susan Straus, from the president of Illinois Now. And you all already met Nicole, our producer from Radical Grace. And so I'll just kick it off for one question to the panelists, and then we'll open it up to all of you. And so I'd be interested in hearing about, the topic of today's panel is faith and feminism. And I'm wondering, for each of you, if there was, just having just finished watching the film, if there was a particular, aspect of the story or of any of the sisters' stories that particularly resonated for your work. And if you saw any kind of openings for this discussion of faith and feminism are often presented as dichotomies. And so I'm curious to hear as well, sort of, do you see what your thoughts on that? So Chris is actually in the film. So I don't know if you have a particular
I can tell you
reference,
later.
but yeah.
I want to hear what other people say.
I think some of the most powerful moments in the film are actually the moments where there are only women in the camera's eye, right? For Roman Catholics, one of, as you heard from Sister Chris and all of the other participants and all of the other subjects of the film, there's a sense in Roman Catholicism that priests are at the center of all. But when you saw those pictures of the nuns, the postulants and the novices from the 1950s, you didn't see pictures of men in the room. And one of the great virtues, I think, of the lives that you had all chosen was that they were lives that told you that women could decide to do something and simply go ahead and accomplish it, right? I think that is the overwhelming sense of the culture of women's capacity, right? Encouraged by their religious communities, inspired by prayer, is very affecting.
My interpretation of the film is based upon what I know happened within the Chicago chapter of Now, and many of the people who I first met back in the 70s when I first joined in 74. These women were religious Catholics, and they had their college experience at Averno College I believe it's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I believe, and also we've had an organization developed called the Veterans of Feminist America, and we've had our meetings. One of the meetings we had was a conference we had at Averno College, and those sisters were very pro women's rights, and they told these young ladies when they were their students that they needed to join Now. And so they were very, which, I was very surprised. I am Jewish, and I always thought that, Betty Friedan was the woman. But There's also a woman named Polly Murray. Her name is spelled Pauli, and her last name is Murray. And she helped with organizing now, and she became an Episcopalian priest. And she died, I believe, in the 80s. But so religion has been a feminist movement, and it has led to, I am secular, but my background is Jewish, and there have been women who have become rabbis and cantors in various Jewish sects. So because there's more than one Jewish religion.
So, Rebecca, I actually want to know, now that you've watched the film versus having made it and thought about it a lot, you know, if how you feel about it, or what has changed. Has anything changed for you?
Well, I would say for me, I mean, this was a lesson in the process of making it, but when I met Chris, you know, she completely blew my mind, because I had this understanding, you know, that my exposure to religious leaders was primarily through the media. So I was not raised in a household that had a very strong faith tradition. I say we were marginally Episcopalian. And so I saw what was in the media, and that was usually conservative men. And they were espousing beliefs that I felt were judgmental and hurtful. And the only option that was presented was either you abide by that or you leave. And it's interesting because I think that's the option that they were presenting, but everybody bought the message, or the broader culture bought that message. And so it never occurred to me that, you know, you could stay within a faith community and an institution because that your faith could keep you there, and that through that faith you could work to transform the human institution. And so that was just what was so exciting to me when I met Chris and learned about her work. It was just like a whole new paradigm.
Thanks, Rebecca, and you have changed me also in all ways for good. I think that it's the only way institutions ever change. People have to change them, you know. And as far as the earlier question, feminism was, in some ways, a dirty word in the Catholic Church. I mean, for probably 20, among everybody except for the women, of course. And I should, you know, I two things I want to say. I've had some wonderful mentors in priests, both from high school. My high school English teacher basically paved the way for me to get a full scholarship to Georgetown University. When I was at Georgetown University, I decided there, you know, with Vietnam, civil rights, there couldn't possibly be a God. This was all a big hoax. And I still went to Mass like every other day, because even though I didn't believe, it felt better to be around people who did. And a wonderful Jesuit priest mentored me, met with me about once a month for about 3 years through that very coming of age time, where you make the beliefs that you were sort of fed or took for granted growing up, and then comes a time like, are they yours or are they not, you know? So, and then my own organization, FutureChurch, was co-founded by a wonderful priest, Father Louis Trivison. So, and the neat thing is, for most of these men, they encouraged women. They pushed them. They pushed me, you know. So I mean, I had a lot of smarts and a lot going for me, but I did not have the experience of being put down by every male, and there were some that did. I'm not going to say that there weren't. So I think that's important. The other important thing that I need to say is that I have always been a feminist, and I think it was because of my mother, a very strong Irish woman who, it was never an issue. she had 4 daughters, and all of us were going to go to college. We had no money, but we were going to go somehow or other. And so there's never any question. And this was at a time when I had friends who were women friends who were being told, no, your brother goes to college, you don't. We can't afford both or whatever. So that being said, faith is what fuels my feminism. And it's because of who I believe God to be. So it was never a conflict. It was sort of a given. And I'm very grateful for the work that Christy and Susan does, especially for now, National Organizations for Women. I think Erin Hanna, who you saw in the film, who is with the pink smoke and with Women's Ordination Conference, I think she interned at National now in Washington. And so we all learned a lot from Erin when she joined the Church Reform community. So anyway, and just one final thing, and then I'll shut up. For all of those out there who did support Catholic sisters during this time, whether it was a vigil or signing a petition or whatever, you made a huge difference. We created a groundswell, thanks to you, that was heard very powerfully among people who needed to hear it. So, thank you.
Should we take some questions? Do you have any questions from the audience? Go ahead.
How did you keep from becoming bitter? This is for Chris.
Okay.
How did you keep from becoming bitter and just walking away when the church, especially like during Benedict and the censure and all of that?
Yeah. Part of it was I feel in many ways I'm the woman I am today because of the Catholic Church, and I loved it too much to let it succumb to its worst elements. Okay, so that's one piece, and then I had really a lot of wonderful community organizing, systemic change training, and had been involved in a number of systemic change movements even before I started doing this stuff in the church. And I knew that when the institution starts pushing back, that means you're making progress. And so I was able to take this sort of very dispassionate view most of the time. When it came to the apostolic visitation coming to my own congregation, I was feeling a little bitter. But I was so proud of my community. But it's still, the principle is true. Anytime you're working for a change in a system, when they start pushing back, it means that you're making an effort. I mean, I don't know how many have seen the film Gandhi, but certainly in all of the nonviolent resistance movements, it's just part of the process. And I think the other piece is I have a really weird sense of humor. And I think I used to tell Kate Kunstler, the canon lawyer that we work with, that part of this is it's very entertaining. It's sort of some people are political junkies. Well, I'm a Catholic Church politics junkie, and you just sort of never know what they're going to do next that really makes you laugh, or anyway, enough said.
I'd be curious, to throw that question.
And I should say I prayed a whole lot, and that helped a lot.
For the two of you and your experiences in, the movements that you've been a part of, and for you, Christy, I'm sure the church part of it, but being a theologian and in academia and all of that, or in the women's movement, I think in any kind of work where you're, working from the margins and trying to change something, there are going to be these moments and these times that feel very dark. So I'd love to hear how you sustain yourselves and your work.
Well, just two things that I would want to bring up, and then I would love to hear from your experience because I think it'll be very different. One of them is that it helps to know a little history, because the worst thing that's going on right now is not half as ridiculous, asinine, hypocritical, or impossible to believe as some other periods in past religious history. You look at it and you say, oh, this too shall pass, right? The other thing is it helps to be a little bit Italian. I think that Americans, at least in the Roman Catholic Church, inherited a little bit too much from Germany. We tend to believe that rules will be followed and the declarations must be obeyed. You know, the Italians don't think that. They just say, well, you know, and they do whatever it is they believed was the gospel to begin with. So it helps to be a little bit Italian, and it helps to know a little bit of history.
Well, I agree. It helps to know history because, as was said in the movie, before, the 12th century, women religious were viewed as maybe not equal, but as part of the church. And I think that's true. You can see it in a lot of religions where, like in the Jewish religion, why is it that the evening before is when a holiday begins? It seems kind of strange to me. But I think it has to do with that women is a very powerful person within the community, and men don't like women having power. And that's what we've been fighting, is really basic. And I think that that's part of it. But to get back to the women that I've met and now, one of the presidents of National Now was ahead of her time talking about, she's Italian, and Eleanor Smeal, and she left the Catholic Church over the priests in criminal behavior, let's put it that way. And she, like no one believed her, but she was proven to be truthful in her allegations of the misbehavior of priests. And as far as one of the women I knew was Mary Jean Collins, who was president of Chicago now, and her sister was a sister. And so we always had that kind of people who were true believers as well as true feminists. And as I said, they got a lot of their background from going to Averno College. So it's really interesting. And I also know that in, I think it was Narelle, the leader of that organization, got her pro-choice beliefs from a priest, so who helped women in need. So I think that's something to think about, that the Catholic Church is one thing, but Catholic religions are something else.
Yeah. So I'll take that one to get it kicked off. So the Nuns on the Bus were, really a specific project of network of Sister Simone's organization. So many of the communities were part of that work, had sisters that went on the bus.
It was really founded by the Leadership Conference of Women Religious that represents 80% of all U.S. nuns in the United States. So that's network. So
yeah, so they have tremendous support from sisters all across the country. When they made their stops on the bus, they stopped at mother houses. That's where they slept, and that's where they parked the bus. So that was very economical for them, and also a place where they could get community nourishment at each stop and connecting with the communities. But the Sister Chris and Sister Jean were not actually on the bus in that way, but they were part of the larger community network of support, I would say.
I think it's important to note that, as Sister Chris has said, that 80% of the women religious were part of the Leadership Conference of Women Religious who were under investigation by the Vatican, and who would have been the groups that would have supported Network and who support your work, who would support the work that Sister Jean did at Leonard House. But I think it's important to note that the other 20% are part of an organization that is a little bit less involved in social justice matters and more focused on prayer. Is that
Right.
fair?
And yeah, and other kinds of good things they
Yes.
do. They're just not as systemically change oriented. The other thing I would add is the other thread here is the Catholic Church reform movement, and I was one of the people that helped spearhead the vigils that happened in at least 100 cities, at least 2 different times, in support of the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. And so there are a group called Catholic Organizations for Renewal that's an umbrella organization for all of the various reform groups, from Call to Action, Women's Ordination Conference, Voice of the Faithful, my group FutureChurch, Dignity USA, New Ways Ministry, Corpus, the Married Priest Group, the Women Church Convergence. And so we all have our main focus about our group, but we come together around common things. And that's the group that really did. Simone, the nuns on the bus, was Simone, her genius, saying, we're getting a lot of media attention from this. And part of it was because all these vigils sprang up all over after the Vatican thought nobody would notice what they were doing. And Simone, like, well, how can we use this on behalf of the people we care about the most, which are the marginalized? So the nuns on the bus. And so it was sort of synchronistic, but they are 2 different threads. And in both instances, the support from the various congregations of sisters was there in spades. Okay.
Go ahead, sir. Right here in front.
I was struck by your comment about how you tended to see religion as being very inward, doctrinal, if not oppressive, where you learned from Chris and her groups a different identity of religion in terms of support of social justice. At the very beginning of the film, I saw one of my favorite people, Jennifer Butler, at that congressional hearing. Director of Faith and Public Life, which is an organization that played a big role in publicizing the statement of the nuns before the healthcare law passed, and also publicizing the nuns on the bus, at least for me. And I just wondered if you had any comment on their role in terms of this magnification of the message that religion overall supports efforts for social justice.
Yeah, Faith and Public Life is a great organization, another DC-based organization that collaborated with Nuns on the Bus, and they really formed in response to the fact that the religious right was controlling the faith narrative that we were getting in the public square, that we were getting on the news. And so that conservative politics became equated with faith on a public level. They had a very effective kind of PR effort. And so Faith and Public Life really formed in response to that, and, working with groups like Network and other faith groups that were oriented around social justice have really been very strategic in finding ways to shift the message. And the Nuns on the Bus is one example of something and of that. And I think there's, part of what makes it effective too is that I think there's a hunger for this other message. So, what I was talking about before, where I, had this one view of what institutional people who participate in institutional religion believe. But I was still drawn to explore this story, right? I wasn't completely turned away. And that was because I felt a spiritual hunger in myself. And I didn't know what I was believe or not believe, but I knew that I could see in the stories of the sisters and of some other people of faith that I was meeting that we shared the same fundamental values, and that the thing that their faith enabled them to do was to have a community, a practice, a structure around those values so that they were able to incorporate it into their life and into their daily practice in a way that was really helpful. And so one of my kind of questions that I was exploring in approaching this film was, okay, what could I learn from the sisters? Even if I don't share the same faith, what could I learn from them about their spiritual practice, and how can I apply elements of that to my life? And so for me, what that's about is the idea that we're all interconnected, right? Or doing practices to help me center myself, which I'm still learning and need support in. I think I'm jealous of the community that they have, and of the the wisdom that they have, that they can just turn to other people, and there's this idea of a spiritual director that I never heard of before, that I learned. I was like, I want one. I need like an agnostic sort of, postmodern spiritual director. But that so
And they'd go with that.
Yeah, they
And
probably
anybody
would.
I know would be going with
That's
that.
what I was thinking. I think I could probably just find somebody in the Catholic Church that would kind of get me, So it's just sort of opening up. It's opened up a lot of things for me. And one of the things that we want to do with this film is, theaters are one venue to screen it, but community screenings are a really important venue for us. So we have a way for people to bring this film to their communities, and we're developing a guide that can be used at those local community screenings to facilitate not only group discussion, but also personal reflection, to help take the opportunity to say, okay, what was the core message, from the film, and how can we apply this and carry this forward, in our own lives. So if that's something that folks are interested in, we actually have a sign-up table outside, and if you have a community that you'd like to bring the film to, we can work together on that.
I think we have time for one more question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
I think you were rightfully rewarded by your accomplishments. I had an acquaintance that was a nun in the Catholic Church who was looking forward to one day becoming a priest. And after years and years of studying, with the thought that she would one day become a priest, but was driven down by the Catholic Church year after year after year, she actually gave up on her faith and the church. So again, I commend you for your drive, because I think she went through some of the same things you did. You went on and succeeded where she felt her only recourse was to exit.
Yeah, I always feel very sad when I hear that. But and way back when the Vatican in 1994 said women can, it's definitive teaching, and Jesus never called women, and therefore women can never be ordained. I had priest friends calling me saying, I don't know how I can keep doing this, And then I had other priest friends sending women to come and talk to me. And I think they were hoping that I was going to talk them into staying into the Catholic Church, which is not how anybody who does any spiritual companioning, that's not how it works, And so some women follow their inner call from the Spirit, and outside, they need to follow that call. That's got to be the first thing. So I mourn with your friend, and I also feel very frustrated by the slowness of the process. But that's why we have church reform organizations too. I could not stay in the Catholic Church if I weren't working to try to change it. And I think that's the gift that the reform communities bring to the justice in the Catholic Church issue, and that's, and I've got some FutureChurch.org. We've got all kinds of materials you can download for free for how to educate about Jesus inclusive practice. Paul's, the women in the ministry of Paul who founded house churches, who served as envoys, and certainly the many women, the call to the diaconate. We've got a lot of letter writing campaigns going on to bring about those changes on our website. So I just encourage people, if that is your passion, there's all kinds of stuff we need you, in terms of the reform movement in the Catholic Church. But also, just to build on what Rebecca said, justice and society issues are very important also. And in some ways, they're not too separate. I mean, I'm really proud of the bishops on immigration, So I think that there are places that all of us have a tug in our hearts around some justice issue, I suspect, or you wouldn't be here tonight. So if you find that tug in your heart, do Rebecca's thing, check out some of the justice, whether it's immigration or sex trafficking of women or whatever. All those women's equality in the church or in society, all of those causes need you. So please do follow up on, if you had some inspiration tonight, please follow through on it. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you would. I'm sorry.
Regarding marketing your cause.
Yeah.
You used every format of marketing, from feet on the ground to lobbying to conferences, but you also used modern day technology, social media, Twitter, Facebook, websites, all these electronic formats of media. In your mind, did one have more of an emphasis on achieving the goal than the other? And if you say it was a mixture of all that got us to where we are, and if that's the case, we weren't in this place 10 years ago with social media and the now generation. Do you think this would have been accomplished in the same time frame, and maybe even not accomplished, had you not used that avenue of marketing?
I think the social media was very important, and I think part of the, certainly in terms of raising the hue and cry among all right-thinking and justice-seeking people. But if I had to name the one thing that, that I personally think was what made the difference in this, it was the leadership of the women's communities from LCWR. And my own congregation, there was tremendous solidarity across the, some 56,000 sisters in the United States. Communities met with other leadership and had a solidarity around who we are in a post-Vatican II church. We've spent 50 years trying to connect with the modern world. I mean, what does it mean to be a woman of the gospel, a Jesus woman in the 21st century? And we think we have a pretty good idea of what that means, today. And so there was no way our leaders would ever have backed down. And I think the Vatican did not know what to do with that. And the good news is a lot of people think that, the bishops support the sisters. No, and this goes back to all the solidarity stuff that we're talking about with women. We are independently funded. We manage all of our own enterprises, which is why when the Catholic Sisters supported the Affordable Care Act, we invented health care in the United States. We run hospital systems. So that's why it made a difference. And so there was, it was sort of like, welcome to the modern world, Vatican. Women are here. We have power. We respect you, but we're not going to let you take our power away. And so even if none of that social media had been happening, that was the rock in a hard place. And I think in some ways it's the Vatican's, not everybody, but they're very good at bullying people and sort of this Wizard of Oz kind of thing. And, when we really stood up, it didn't happen. And it couldn't have happened because we were ready to be non-affiliated with the official institutional church. But they were the ones that were going to have to throw us out. We would not leave of our own. They would have to say, you are no longer canonical. And then we would have said, well, it was your decision. It's not ours, but we cannot be other than who we are. I'm sorry. get me going on this. You make me cry. But it was one of my proudest moments. But you know, I've never been happier to be a. And I think it made a difference not just for sisters, but for all Catholics. It was human rights for ordinary Catholics in the church. You know, because nuns are lay people. We're not. It's one of the little known things. And so it was for everybody. I'm sorry. I talk too much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we I think, will all the panelists be in the lobby to talk to people if they want? We also have a great. Okay.
All behind the scenes, and I have to say that was one of the things that distressed me the most, that not one bishop spoke in our defense. But there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and certainly Bishop Tobin was huge. He wasn't a bishop at the time, but we had a lot. We had support behind the scenes. You're welcome.
So we have a merchandise table out there where you can get all things Radical Grace. There's a flyer about community screenings. Rebecca is showing the t-shirt. We have these. We have awesome stickers, tote bags, those sorts of things. There's sign-up sheets for community screenings. There's flyers there. There's also, so you can pre-order a DVD. Do we want to do you want to take over now? And I will.
Real quick.
hold this.
So if you've got your phone accessible, please pull it out. Step-by-step instructions. Okay, so we've got our phones out. Okay, so this is how you can sign up for the Radical Grace email list. So you talked about technology and modern tools. And so if you're interested in the issues in the film, the themes of the film, in how, you can, the tools that you can have for your own life to try to bring some of what the sisters embody into our lives, these are things that we can share with you if you sign up. So if you send a text message to this number on the bottom, 33733, as if that's like a phone number that you're writing a text message to, and then in the body of the text you write rad film, and the case doesn't matter. You don't have to make it capital or anything. So you're going to text rad film to 33733. And then it will ask for your email address, and we can be able to share updates and information with you and the various activities and tools that we have available.
Like partner screening.
Oh, yes. Like when partner screenings. Yeah, like when, yeah, well, and when screenings are happening in other places and things like that, you can tell your friends about it. You'll get information about it, that kind of thing. So, thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming.
very much.